Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. And first of all the viewers and everybody who's watching our show, Ramazan Mubarak to all of you. Today, since we will be doing a show on the Indian elections, and as we all know that almost 900 million, that's 90 crore people, will be casting their vote, or most of them they've already done in the few phases, because there are 7 phases. It's a huge country with a lot of people will be voting. So the 5th phase, it's been complete now, 6th and then 7th. Because if you want to know the exact dates, I'll also mention. The interesting part is that over here, when you look at the details, you'll find that 2 major parties are contesting. One is the BJP under the command of the current Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the second is Congress, where the head is Rahul Gandhi, son of Sonia Gandhi, and the former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Now, the first phase was on April 11th, 91 constituencies across 20 states. Phase 2 on April 18th, 97 constituencies across 13 states. Phase 3, April 23rd, 97 constituencies across 13 states. Phase 4, April 29th, 71 constituencies across 9 states. And Phase 5, which was today, May 6th, 51 constituencies across 7 states, and the Phase 6 will be held on May 12th, 59 constituencies across 7 states, and the last phase, the 7th phase, will be held on April, this was the 7th on the 19th of May. So 59 again constituencies across 8 states. So the interesting part is that the total number, it's going to be the largest. Last time it was around 873 million, and now the number has increased, and there will be 900 million, that's 90 crore people who will be eligible to vote in the world's largest electoral exercise. Now, what exactly is happening in Kashmir, we'll definitely be talking about that. But let me also give you some more data. There are 545 seats in the lower house, and the digital magic number is 273. Whosoever takes that number of seats is going to form the government. Then you talk about 1 million polling stations. You're talking about 2,354 registered political parties in India. Just look at the number. There are 7 federal territories, 29 states. And if you look at it, I mean, there's a lot of data available with us. Now, interestingly, let's see who wins this party. Last year in 2014, when the elections were held, the turnout ratio was 66%. That's pretty high. That means that out of every 3, 2 people did cast their vote last year. So let's see what is the percentage this year. And the votes will be counted on the 23rd of this month, and then the results will be announced on the same day. Currently, it seems that it's a very neck-to-neck sort of an election, but primarily in certain areas, BJP seems to be in command. In certain areas, it's the Congress, and then obviously Bengal and Bihar and that area. When we talk about Mamata Banerjee, I mean, she seems to be the person in charge over there as well. Now, to talk about this, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us Tariq Pirzada Sahab, Senior Political Analyst and Expert on Indian Affairs. Thank you very much, Pirzada Sahab, for taking out your time being a part of a show. And we'll be shortly joined in by Malik, Senior Kashmiri Leader, and we'll be also talking to her regarding the overall situation in Kashmir. Her husband, Yasin Malik, is in a miserable state. Let me use this word. He's in the jail, and he's not well. He's sick, but nothing has been done so far. There is pressure on a lot of Hurriyat leaders also. But Gilani Saab has very categorically said that this is not an election at all. The Indian forces are forcing the people to cast their vote, I mean, against their will. So let's see what happens out there as well. And we also have with us Syed Muhammad Ali Sahab. He's an IR expert from George Washington University, USA. Thank you very much, Syed Muhammad Ali Sahab, for taking out your time and talking to us in this particular program. Moving on to Tariq Pirzada Sahab, first of all, sir, huge election, 900 million, 90 crore voters.
Right.
I mean, this is the 5th phase which has concluded today. Correct. 2 more phases to go. But currently, sir, what do you think? Who has an edge in the current elections, or it is like a scattered kind of a formula? Some areas are BJP dominated, some areas are obviously where the Congress has an edge, and obviously other smaller parties as well.
Well, there are two advantages that Narendra Modi has been very skillfully built in the last several months. Number one, rather in the last 4 years, he has been able to build the Indian economy, in a very impressive way. You have to give him the credit, or credit to his advisors.
Even the foreign policy.
And I'll come to that. In foreign policy area, they have been confronting Pakistan very successfully on many fronts. But recently they had a major setback on the 27th when the strategy of 26th failed actually. But remember one thing, this is my second point. In the first 13 hours after the attack, after the intrusion by the Indian Air Force, sponsored by Narendra Modi, they were able to send a message to India and to the Indian people that, look, we have been able to penetrate Pakistan's air defense, and Pakistan has terrorism bases, and that I am the one who did it. So A, the economy, B, the first 13 hours propaganda that laid the foundation for the smooth sailing that Narendra Modi...
Even now he's trying to capitalize on this security issue.
That he is having right now, the smooth sailing. So I would say that on a scale of 1 to 10, there are chances that he can carry the day by a margin of 6 to 6. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 6 being the highest in this. So it'll be a victory on the margins, and by the margins, it looks like he'll carry the day.
So you think that BJP can form the government on its own, or do you think they'll be requiring certain other parties to join hands with them to form a strong government? Because they plan to sort of do a lot if they end up getting 2/3 majority.
There are lots of extremist parties in India,
that's what my point
including
is.
BJP, and there'll be a coalition of all those parties because it's a big country. So even if you have 51% majority by 51%, you have to have other parties aligned with you. So they'll be building coalitions with other parties, and there'll be a anti-Pakistan rhetoric. And those people who believe that this election is only about, that this hostility against Pakistan is only because of the electioneering and the politics of election, they're dead wrong. Modi has been doing his dirty game in the last four years against Pakistan, bombing the control line, imprisoning the Kashmiris, using pellet guns, trying to destroy the freedom movement in Kashmir. So he will continue his Hindu crusade against the Kashmiris and Pakistan. So this election will not put an end to that. So I would say there's a likelihood he will carry the day, but I'll be surprised and shocked if he loses it.
If he loses. So first of all, thank you very much, Mishal, for taking out your time and talking to us. First of all, ma'am, the first question is about the health of Yasin Malik Saab. Please, would you like to tell us and our viewers about it?
Health is very weak, it's very fragile, and they've kept him in a death cell in Tihar jail, and it's just like a cage with an open toilet, and he has no access to any kind of books, any newspapers. He doesn't know what date it is over there. And
what about the medical facility?
And no medical facilities. And when the situation, especially when he went on a hunger strike against the NIA raid,
it's been almost
this
2
was
weeks,
2
right?
weeks back, and he protested against the serious interrogation. He was handcuffed, and they were just torturing him mentally, and also I've heard that a bit of physical as well. And because mental torture is extreme, and the lights are on, he can't go to sleep, and then they keep questioning him and probing him, and not proper food facilities, health facilities. So against all this interrogation and no counsel access, and no meeting allowed with family, and solitary confinement in Jammu jail before being shifted to Tihar. So the only option I think he had was to just, to go on a hunger strike against the kind of treatment. It's a very torturous condition that he's going through right now. And through your program, I would like to appeal not just as somebody who's advocating the rights of Kashmir's freedom, but as a wife right now, that my husband is a prisoner, at least the rights, because you have Dr. Pirzada over here, he's mashallah a lawyer also, he knows that the rights of political prisoners according to the Geneva Conventions, and India is already a signatory to that. he's not getting any of those. There are a lot of people who have been slapped with Public Safety Act before as well, and they're still locked up in jails, but they're not in solitary confinement nor in death cells. And I mean, its health is so fragile, and just for 15 minutes, my sister-in-law got access to him after a lot of hard work and
You have been
waiting
able
for.
to speak to him? ma'am?
No, I
access,
haven't,
not at all?
and I have a right to talk to him according to the Geneva Conventions as a family member, as a wife, and then I have done numerous press conferences. I have been sending letters, correspondence with human rights organizations globally, the UN. Tomorrow I'm presenting another letter to the UN headquarters where the
Are you
UN
getting any
head
sort of
in-
positive response from that? ma'am?
They're all concerned about it. Just yesterday, I received a public response from MAPIM, that's a cartel of many INGOs. It's very important, and the person heading that is Mr. Haji Muhammad. He's the commerce advisor to Mahathir, because I visited him last year, and he has sent a very strong condemnation, and I've sent it to Norway, to the European countries, the P5 countries. It's going on, but you know, everybody is concerned, but I want more vocal support, more and more.
But that is
because
what
that's
matters at the end of the
human
day, you're
rights
right.
organizations,
Yeah.
civil society, and I appeal to both of you as well in your circles. Just please spread the word that, you know, at least he should be taken out of the death cell, because I have no guarantee if he can survive. I'm realistically talking.
Because the
I'm
reports
not
which we have
emotionally
received,
talking
I mean,
right
they're
now.
not good. You're right.
Yeah,
I
they're
totally agree
not
with you.
good at all, and he could not even stand up on his own feet when my sister-in-law Amna, when she met him for 15 minutes, and there was this, he was in a cage, and there were like thousands of army personnel around him, and she was telling me that they only take him to the army police hospital after every 2 weeks, just for, like, you know, that ceremonial or whatever you could call
Ceremonial
that.
visit, let's
yeah,
put it
that's
this way.
it. So no, because he is
But
a
no
serious
proper
chronic heart
care has been-
patient. Yeah, he has a metallic valve, artificial valve, and he's a chronic kidney patient. And imagine not having water for 14 days. And he's not even getting proper food there.
I'm sure.
Very unhygienic
I'm
condition.
sure,
yeah.
ma'am. That's
Open
what-
toilet.
that's
Imagine
what-
an open toilet. You're
that's
locked up
what-
in a cage, and you're not. And there's nobody around to talk to you. Even, you know, he was telling Amina, my sister-in-law, that after every 10 hours, a policeman or security personnel, he comes to give him food, once in the morning and once at 5 o'clock, and no dinner, nothing. And the whole day and night, he's all alone. And not allowed to read books. She gave him 2 books because he wanted to read. They said nothing is allowed. No
I mean,
books,
this is the mental
nothing.
torture
Yeah,
which the
extreme.
Indians are known for.
Extreme.
Unfortunately, this is so tragic. Pirzad sahab, you wanted to add something?
Just one
Please do
line,
that, then I'll
just
go
one
to.
liner. I supporting all the points that Mishal, a brave wife and a brave social worker and a Kashmiri leader, she has raised all the points. They are all valid. Let me add just one thing. I think I would request the government of Pakistan to take a more vocal stance on the plight of the Kashmiri leaders who are in prison, particularly Yasin, not because he's the husband of Mishal, which is a fact, and I'm interested for that personal report that we have with her. But even as a Kashmiri leader, he deserves better treatment. He's a political prisoner. This is the reality, and he has to be given all the facilities if Indian government wants to keep him behind the bar. But the fact is, he should not be kept behind the bar. He has not killed any Indian soldier. He has not shed anybody's blood. He should be allowed to continue his political struggle.
Absolutely.
And let me add one thing. Kashmiris have a right to liberate themselves from India. And I think this freedom movement must succeed.
must
And
go
we
on.
need
It
to,
must be
we in
supported.
Pakistan need to do more on that front.
Definitely. Let me go to Syed Muhammad Ali. He's an IR expert, as I earlier mentioned, from George Washington University, USA. Ali Saab, you heard what our panelists, Mishal, Malik, and Dr. Tariq Pirzada said here. Now, first, your quick comment regarding what you heard and what's going on out there, the kind of treatment Mr. Yasin Malik is getting there, sir. That's horrible. I mean, this is what India is known for. Now, your take on this point, and also the second question is about the fifth phase of the Indian election, sir.
Okay, well, obviously a very distressing situation, and the human rights violations which have been lingering, since a while, and peripherally the international community does acknowledge this fact. But one important thing which happened, which is the larger human rights violation situation, is the UN's Human Rights Office last year, for the first time ever, took out this rather damning report on the Kashmir situation. And
Yes.
to be unbiased, they didn't even use the language that we use, where it's Indian-held Kashmir, or how India refers to our side of Kashmir. So essentially, they tried to look at the situation on both sides, and that was a very wasted, squandered opportunity by the Pakistani side, where we could have really, it was a window of opportunity for us to have taken the international community onto our side, because internationally the use of pellet guns, the violence against women, the kidnappings, the extrajudicial killings, all these issues were acknowledged in the report. However, to be impartial, the report also looked at what was happening on this side of the Kashmir, and how political protest, for instance, is not allowed, in the name of security, etc. But by and large, about 80% of the scrutiny was on the Indian side, and it was done, through the offices of the UN. And unfortunately, this report had to be done outside of Kashmir, because India clearly, didn't want to allow the UN access to the Indian side. But what Pakistan could have done was agreed to provide access. And if we had done so and tried to address some of the recommendations emerging from this report, then we would have had the weight of international support and a higher moral ground to call out the Indian human rights abuses. And really, we just went in for the conventional tit for tat, where we said, oh, sorry, India is not allowing access to its side, and Pakistan will not do so unless India does that. So, situated within that, of course, is this personal story and what's happening with political prisoners. But we need to be cognizant of these very scant international opportunities which do come our way, and seize them. And that was certainly a failure on our part. Now coming to your second
Regarding the
question,
Indian election,
how what would you like me to speak to on that
let's throw
front?
light on the election held in Kashmir. I mean, if you call that an election, by the way.
So, I mean, for Kashmir, the situation is, it's particularly precarious, because Modi ji has been talking about revoking the special status of Kashmir. And as it is, there is this kind of demographic warfare, and perhaps, we have, we've seen over the past several years, the conflict has driven out some of the Kashmiri Pandits, from this region, but the Indian state, remains adamant to try and control, Kashmir. And if the special status is revoked, then that would allow, other Indians to come in, purchase property, etc. And really, the attempt would be then by the state, which is something that's already been happening, would go into high gear. This idea of trying to change the demographic contours of Kashmir, and to try and quell the insurgency that way. So in that sense, I mean, there is much at stake. Within the context of who comes to power, besides a range of other issues, that are dependent on the outcomes of the general elections.
All right. Now, Mr. Malik, one important point, and that is, if you remember, Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, issued a statement about 2 weeks ago that if Narendra Modi wins, there are better chances of Pakistan getting in some meaningful dialogue with them. I do not agree with that. I mean, that's my own personal observation. I totally disagree with that. I think things would get worse because this very intelligently described by the gentleman in USA says that this demographic warfare that's going on, and obviously they're trying to change the demographic. If this is, for example, revoked special status of Kashmir, things would be very different, and that is going to be a huge blow for the freedom movement and for all those who have been struggling for decades and decades, ma'am. Your take on that point?
Absolutely, I agree with you. Their election manifesto, it's filled with abrogation of Article 370. It was there in the previous elections as well. And we have not seen any change in his policies, even right now when the elections are going on. The same violence is going on in Kashmir, and there's almost like less than 1% voter turnout. And in some areas, it's zero voter turnout in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And it's basically, it's a military exercise to elect people of their choices, even if they get 1 or 2 votes or few hundred votes.
And what about the transparency, ma'am? Don't you think they
there's
can actually change the result?
Of course.
Because that's what I'm saying. If
they
the
don't
ballot
even need
boxes
to-
are
they don't
kept, I mean, who knows what's
Faisal,
going
they don't
to...
even need to change the results because it's their puppets who are the candidates, because it's under the Indian constitution. And the reason why they have these elections is basically to pass all those draconian and black laws like TADA, POTA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act, Telegraph Act, all these acts that give complete immunity to the Indian forces. Even right now when my husband is being slapped with Public Safety Act, it's also a black law, and through this act, this law which is passed through these legislative puppet assemblies in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, you don't have counsel access for, and without trial they can keep you for minimum 2 years. So it's like basically it's like
So the law supports that he can be jailed for 2 years
he-
without anything.
any council access or meeting your family. So that these laws protect their occupation over there. So it's basically these elections have always taken place to protect the army, the occupation, give them a stamp of another 4 or 5 years, and then to continue the killing spree over there. So that's one thing. But secondly, about Mr. Modi, I'm not that positive. But if he comes into power this time, I believe he will be a weaker Prime Minister compared to the previous mandate that he got. But as Dr. Pirzada Saab said that he's going to have this alliance with other hardline parties, those fanatic Hindus. So yes, he has sown the seeds of extremism and fanaticism and Hindutva, the saffronization over there. But I have a feeling that maybe he will not get that kind of thumping majority this time. And because if he comes into power, he shouldn't be that strong. If he's weaker, then he is a coward from inside, basically. It's just all this killing, whatever violence that he does, he has that mindset, but at the same time, he's very, very insecure also, and he keeps creating one stunt after the other. So people of such mindset, your wife is also a psychologist. I mean, she can tell us better about, his psyche right now. I see him on TV, his rallies, and there's this fear in his eyes that, he's so clung to the fact that, he's nothing without being a prime minister. So he would, even if he is a weaker prime minister, he will be desperate to keep everybody happy this time. And maybe there could be chances that, he gives in to the public or the international pressure, and he comes on dialogue with Pakistan and starts a dialogue. But if he comes strong, then it's going to be
It's going to be a problem not only for the
picture,
Kashmiris, for Pakistan
Yes.
also, and the kind of mindset this man has.
Yeah.
He, I think, really needs to go and see a psychiatrist, honestly speaking. I mean, what he's done in Gujarat, is that normal? For God's sake, and he got away with it.
The United States imposed
Remember?
Yeah.
a
He wasn't
ban
granted
on
visa,
his
yes.
entry into the United States.
Exactly,
Number
and see-
one. Number
Imagine.
two, I just beg to slightly differ with Michelle on this thing that he just might cave into, not cave in or succumb to some kind of international pressure. No. Leaving aside this radical terrorist Modi, all of the prime minister in India, they have not accepted international pressure. Since Simla agreement, they have been simply sticking to one domestic position, that this is a bilateral issue. But when they say bilateral issue, would there be a dialogue based on their willingness to enter into a dialogue with Pakistan? The history of last 40 years since Simla tells us that there won't be any dialogue. There were some secretarial level dialogues, and they ended up in total collapse at the end. So even if you say Narendra Modi loses the election and Rahul Gandhi comes into power, the position in Kashmir will not change unless two things happen. A, the liberation movement gets intensified within Kashmir, number one, which I hope that the Kashmiris really put up a much stronger
It is.
fight.
It is. Every day it's increasing.
And it
That's
must
true.
grow
Yes.
substantially, number one. Number two, Pakistan's stance has to change.
They always claim that
let me just
the
say,
diplomatic, the
I'm not
moral,
criticizing. The reason we need to change is that if they, scrap those 370 and other, constitutional amendments that that still protect somewhat the Kashmiris, then we have a change of status of Kashmir altogether. Then in that case, Pakistan the people of Pakistan, if not the government of Pakistan, will be left with no recourse but to say, if you go to that extent, we will not let you legitimize your occupation of Kashmir and the incorporation of Kashmir into India, and there will be military consequences of that. You got to say that. Number two, you got to tell the people of Pakistan, India is an enemy state. Look, 10 million Kashmiris who are under Indian occupation, they are just like slaves, worse than slaves. 84,000 square kilometers of territory under Indian occupation, Muslim territory, a history under Indian occupation. I'm not trying to be philosophical.
these are realities.
Culture, water resources, you name it. And the ideology of Pakistan will collapse if you let Kashmir get incorporated into India after those provisions are taken away. All I'm trying to say is it is high time that Pakistan takes steps. Pulwama was a great act of courage by a local Kashmiri. He shed his blood, and the result was that India was brought down to knees at least for a few days. I think there should be a greater intensification of Kashmiri liberation movement, and we need to provide financial, material resources, and if you don't do that, what are we doing for Kashmiris then? And I'm not criticizing one government or
This
the other.
political, moral, and diplomatic support you think is an old phenomenon.
There is
it's
only
not
one
as useful.
ex-serviceman whom I know. I hope I can take his name, but he told me not to. He said there will never be the peace will not happen in Kashmir, just through moral, political, and diplomatic support. That is one thing that is for sure, and I agree with him. If that were the case, the resolution would have taken place. Kashmiris would have been independent. They would have been a part of Pakistan by now. But India's growing economic power coupled with military power is building more and more dust on the issue of Kashmir. This liberation movement is a great act and a golden chance, but we just might lose.
Pirzad Sahib, if you look at it now, I was just going through some data. Less than $4 billion, $400 billion, 400 is what their forex reserve is. $80 billion of yearly remittances India receives.
Yeah.
Highest in the world. So, they have this economic strength, whether we admit it or we don't.
No, I'm just.
And at the same time, when you talk about Pakistan, things are
they are
really
using their economic muscle coupled with military muscle to pressure Pakistan.
Absolutely.
And there are people in Foreign Office, including the ex-Foreign Secretary, Mr. Riaz Mohammad Khan, who think, we need to just worry about economic build-up. He was being hypocritical. I was a part of that show in Serena Hotel. And such is the case of other people who are in position in Foreign Office. This country's bureaucracy
you think a
does
more
not
robust,
believe
robust
in the
approach
liberation
needs
of
to be there.
Kashmir.
All right, let me put the same question to Syed Muhammad Ali Saab. Since you live in USA, you're a professor, an IR expert, and I'm sure you meet a lot of people from various walks of life. The genuine issue of Kashmir, don't you think it really needs to be sort of, marketed in an appropriate manner? People working in the think tanks, whether they're from Kashmir or from Pakistan or other nationalities for that matter, whosoever supports the cause, should do a little more. And one more thing, as Pirzada Sahab says that this diplomatic, political or moral support isn't enough. More needs to be done. If so, your take on that, sir.
Well, I mean, we've already seen in 71 and 65 and all the subsequent skirmishes that, doing more in this world, and particularly in this global scenario, I mean, be it use of proxy actors or any other, use of force that we might think of employing would be, potentially disastrous. But of course, that does not mean that, there are absolutely no means to address this problem. And they are, I mean, they are potentially also very good, solutions available to address the situation, the Kashmiri situation, where the LOC becomes a much more porous and flexible, arrangement, allowing Kashmiris on both sides, to be able to visit any part of Kashmir that they like, etc. So a desecuritization of this region. But that is, I mean, that is a goal, worth exploring. But in the current scenario, in the last several decades now, and the kind of carnage and the repression and this vicious cycle, and then how in the post 9/11 world, this kind of hyper securitized state, the rise of Hindutva in India, and I do agree that the BJP is even if the BJP were to lose the elections, I mean, that does not mean that India would be necessarily changing its policy, because we've seen a kind of a bipartisan consensus on issues like this. And that would open a Pandora's box, because there are many other regions, I mean, be it Assam, be it the Naxalite corridor, be it this simmering, Khalistan issue. So, also for India, I mean, in order to try and come to solutions, which are non-confrontational, we need to see this issue from all sides, without letting go of the gravity of the situation, and the plight of, on the ground. So, internationally also, yes, Modi was persona non grata, in the US, but recall how not only under the Trump administration, but under the Obama administration, he's been rolled out the red carpet treatment, and will probably continue receiving that treatment. I mean, if you look at the larger geostrategic movement in our part of the world, and the increasing sort of isolation of Pakistan's strategic depth doctrine, and India sort of becoming instrumental as a counterbalance to China. That has many manifestations, and it is those manifestations that we need to engage, understand, and then engage with. So, for instance, very recently, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, the U.S. SURF reports, right? So they globally go, and there's criticism of that report, but it's mandated by legislation within the U.S., and of course, that ranking carries a lot of weight, and that has just put out its latest list of 16 countries. And Pakistan is on that list where religious freedom is not allowed. India, Iraq, Afghanistan are on tier 2. So, the despite what's happening, around the elections, the election violence, the beef mob lynchings, the vitriol that we've been seeing, in the last decade in India, at least, this idea of love jihad, etc. India is not, ranked. I mean, we can think about, those rankings. I mean, why do you have Saudi Arabia, Russia, Vietnam, Pakistan, like this array of countries, on the countries of particular concern list? And there is that commission has suggested to the State Department that there needs to be sanctions on countries like Pakistan. So there are implications of Pakistan, being considered
So, I mean, if
a
because
place where there isn't religious
anti-Pakistan
freedom, and of
sentiments,
course,
unfortunately, they do sell in India, and unfortunately, that's where the Modi administration and his party is trying to capitalize. Yes, Firza Saab?
Yeah. Well, as far as the ability of the United States to influence the course of events in Pakistan and around Pakistan is concerned, in the last 10, 15 years, despite 9/11, the ability of the United States to do so has substantially decreased over time. Pakistan's very strengthened, relationship, rather strategic, somewhat strategic relationship with Beijing, with Ankara, with Saudi Arabia, and with Malaysia. These are four major countries, and of course the Gulf states. This is a very unique situation Pakistan had never enjoyed before, in addition to, I forgot to mention, the newly emerging relations with Moscow. So we are, for the first time, a country which is not isolated at all. This is one thing that all international experts need to understand. We never had enjoyed a position of this kind before. Turkey is providing weapons technology on loans. China is providing economic technology, economic resources. Now, Malaysia has agreed to trade with Pakistan.
$900 million worth of
What I'm trying to say is, Pakistan is not there where it was some years ago. All we need to do is, if we support, and let me say very bluntly, one of the reasons I'm trying to say the side with Imran Khan and his government is, this is a golden chance for Pakistan to rebuild itself. If you don't do it, we are back to those looters, Mr. Zardari and Mr. Nawaz Sharif, and Pakistan will go down the tubes. And it's not just Imran Khan who can build it. Anybody who steps in his shoes and follows this rebuilding of the nation, which is going on right now, although the tough times are here, price hikes are there. My simple suggestion is that this is not the Pakistan of 1970. I beg to disagree with my friend from Washington. This is not the Pakistan of 1965. In addition to being a nuclear state, leaving that aside, we are a major conventional power at the present time. Major. Our Air Force has less sophisticated aircrafts on the whole, but with the help of AWACS and other fighter plane,
it's a defensive force, basically. Yeah.
We have been able to compensate for one weakness with the strength of another system. Similarly, we have been able to wisely use our military budget somewhat. There has been a hiatus since 9/11. We have been able to build something. My simple suggestion is, we're not talking about fighting a war, but we are talking about supporting the Kashmiri with mind and muscle in a big way. If you don't do that, again, I have a news for somebody, it will hurt Pakistan in the long run, and of course the Kashmiris.
All right. Vishal, BJP or Congress, for that matter, whosoever comes in power, I mean, we wouldn't see a major change in their national narrative regarding Pakistan or Kashmir for that matter. But it seems that if BJP regains, or again, I mean, they come into power, they will create. Narendra Modi is going to create a lot of problem, not only for the Kashmiris, for Pakistan also, aggression on LOC, these, propagandas against Pakistan. They will multiply, and obviously they'll use all the resources they have to malign us and to damage us by kinetic means or by non-kinetic means. Ma'am, your take.
Yeah, I agree with you. The man, he's so war hungry because he wants to keep cashing on the Hindu vote, that he wants to keep blaming Pakistan and anti-Pakistan and anti-Kashmir bashing and trying to link it with terrorism. So he's desperate. He's desperate for power. He's hungry, no matter how many people get killed in that. But the second point is that even if he goes towards that, that is also a very disturbing factor, but at the same time there is a positive aspect to that as well, because the world has become so, I mean, though we are a global village, but somehow the world had started ignoring Kashmir so much as if we were on some other planet. But end of Feb, if you remember, the kind of relationship was so close to, pressing
almost
that button
war,
on 27th of February. And the world quickly suddenly realized that, okay, this is actually a nuclear flashpoint. This is not just a dialogue, and they were actually nearing that button.
Yes.
And the whole world went on a red alert, because this can I mean,
It is
it's
not only going to
literally,
affect these
we are
two
all
countries, the
sitting
whole
on a
globe is going
nuclear
to-
flashpoint, and if the world fails to ignore that now, because sooner or
Alright.
later, if Modi is in power, there is a future, a very strong chances of war. It won't be any micro short war. It will be a full-fledged nuclear war, because Pakistan has a smaller army compared to India's army. I mean, you can ask defense experts. So for non-conventional methods, the chances are very, very high.
let's hope and
that
pray
can
things
go
do
get it.
remain
It's
calm.
not about hope. We have to work towards bringing India towards any peaceful solution and putting international pressure on them. And that's where the responsibility falls on America
Yes,
also.
that's correct. Absolutely.
Because you have
Absolutely.
this Mr. Muhammad Ali, the professor from IR from America, George Washington University.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to remind him that it was Bill Clinton, after 9/11, when the whole world order changed, it was him who started the peace processes between Israel and Palestine and the Kashmir dialogue.
At the end of the day-
he made sure that, I remember that time Yasin was in Jodhpur jail, and he used his personal influence on the Indian government to get him
All right.
out, because he wanted
Yeah,
dialogue.
yeah.
So there was a time when America was interested in constructing.
Maybe now they're not.
But now,
It's
I mean,
the other way
if
around.
they're now, but
Yeah.
for their own interest,
Though
because if
Mr.
there is a nuclear war, there's going to be a nuclear winter everywhere.
President Trump
there will be
claims
global
that
famine.
he was
There's
more
so many
concerned
South-
about this issue between Pakistan and India when he was trying to negotiate
Yeah, but
with
it's
North
going to
Korea.
affect them.
But
It's going to
let's see,
affect the whole
let's see.
world if
Absolutely,
something like
I
that
totally agree with you.
happens.
But ma'am, I was told I'm
Yeah.
totally running out of time. Mohammad Ali Saab, thank you very much for being a part of our show, sir. Thank you very much once again, ma'am. It was a pleasure having you. Tariq Pirzada, good to see you, sir. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you tomorrow at 8. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.